one of my values, as you know, is questioning status quo. Like, why do we all think that we should just turn to our employer for our health insurance, for our maternity leave, for all these things that we should be able to actually determine more on our own?
And part of the problem too is health insurance plans are very confusing, right?
When the health insurance plans seem confusing, I think a lot of people just opt for the most expensive because they're like, that must be the best one. So, anyways, back to HSAs.
Despite its name, health savings account, it actually is an investment account. For an example, if an investor maxes out her HSA this year and then just never contributes to her HSA again, using the rule of 72 at an 8% average annual rate of return, her account would be.
Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Coin. I got Whitby back on the pod. What up, Whit?
Hi, Allegra. Hi, Coffee and Coin listeners.
Believe it or not, she has returned from her at-large, international, all around the universe, but not above. Wait, what is it called when you
Not,
went out of space?
yeah,
But
not,
you're like within this realm.
yes. Haven't started my space exploration quite yet, but it's on the list.
You've been exploring not outer space, but inner space. Let's just say
That
that.
is true. Yes.
Anyways, she's back in Austin, and we are recording a podcast today on a very important investment account that I think a lot of people forget about. It's not the easiest to grasp, but it is so worthwhile once you do because it has triple tax advantages, which we talk a lot about tax advantage accounts and non-tax advantage accounts and how both are important in a portfolio of a wealthy woman who wants to be strategic and build money for not just now, but the medium term and definitely the long term. So this account is called an HSA. And Whit, kick us off. Just kind of tell us, what is the HSA and this amazing triple tax benefit? We'll break that
Yeah.
down later, though.
So HSA, very simple acronym. It stands for Health Savings Account. So it is a taxed advantaged investment account that can be used by individuals who have a high deductible health plan uh, to save for their qualified medical expenses.
Okay. Well, then let's just take one step back and make sure our listeners know what a high deductible health plan is.
Yes. Okay. Good idea. So, high deductible health plans are going to be your more affordable health insurance plan. And that is because they come with relatively low monthly premiums. But these low monthly premiums, they are in exchange for higher deductibles, higher out-of-pocket maximums, hence the names, hence the name high deductible health plan. So basically what's happening here is instead of turning a decent amount of your money over each month to the insurance company through your premium, in exchange for, covering a lot of your medical costs when, something happens or when you get a medical bill, that like a PPO, for example, you are keeping more money in your possession with a high deductible health plan because you have low premiums, but you are on the hook for covering more of your medical bills when you use those services and and medical attention.
Okay, so what's the case for more healthcare expenses being paid by the individual and not the insurer?
I would say that the high deductible health plans they're typically better suited for your younger, healthier individual who, is doing their annual checkups, their preventative care, and maybe doesn't, require extra medical attention. But the way I look at it is, why pay for something that you're not necessarily going to use? With a lot of PPO plans, you could, and you're young and healthy, and you're not needing a lot of doctor attention, you might be overpaying the insurance company every month with your premium and not really recouping that money back in your medical bills. So the advantage that I see is that more money like stays in your possession, in your control, and you could decide to do with that money, whatever it is you want to do with it. Keep that money invested in the market, capture those compounding returns, put that money in a high yield savings account that's accruing interest. And then when a medical service, does happen and you need to pay for it, you could cover it because you have that money. Your money has been making money essentially for you, and you're truly paying for what you're using.
Yeah, and just because we mentioned PPO, that acronym stands for Preferred Provider Organization. It's a type of medical plan in which coverage is provided to participants through a network of selected healthcare providers, such as hospitals and physicians. And so we are all familiar with getting a job, getting offered health insurance. PPO is typically one that you see in your offer. And as what was saying, like I have a PPO currently and I pay a significant amount monthly for that. And I am alone on my health insurance. My husband actually has my daughter on his health insurance, so he can have access to an HSA, which we'll talk about later. But I really like this idea of only paying for what you need. And I think the health insurance industry definitely preys on the fear of us having something terrible go wrong. And so we want to just pay that up front and not worry about it. But I don't know about you. I have spent like my entire 20s really not having anything more than my annuals. It really wasn't until I had a baby that the costs started like ticking up. And even when I did end up needing specialists, like I've had to go to ear, nose, and throat doctors and a few other things, those typically weren't covered and I was paying out of pocket anyways. So I definitely like the idea, and not just with health savings accounts, but with all things, having more control independently on you. And really, one of my values, as you know, is questioning status quo. Like, why do we all think that we should just turn to our employer for our health insurance, for our maternity leave, for all these things that we should be able to actually determine more on our own? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
And part of the problem too is health insurance plans are very confusing, right? Like it's hard for the individual to understand, like, okay, what comes in this PPO option? What comes in this high deductible health insurance plan option? What, like, I'm looking at these choices and I don't know which one to pick, right? And so a nice default can be like, okay, well, if I just pay this amount a month, the insurance company will handle something if it happens. But back to your comment about questioning the quo, like my motto is, well, more money in my possession for longer, the better. And you could do that through a high deductible health plan and an HSA.
totally. And just to that point of when the health insurance plans seem confusing, I think a lot of people just opt for the most expensive because they're like, that must be the best one. And I think we do that in a lot of places. I'm not downing anyone who's done that. I've done that. I've gotten fed up and just been like, whatever, it's coming out of my paycheck. I'm not going to see it. Just get the most expensive because I'll have the most coverage. So I'm going to assume. But I think we do that so often that we flex that muscle instead of the muscle of like really choosing what we should do that's right for us, which is basically what Factor in the Well Circle is all about. Like, it's all there. We're going to show you the options so that you can start thinking, more of that, exploring our inner space, our interpersonal needs, desires, goals. Like, what account structure and what investments should I be utilizing for me? Because that same line of thinking happens often with college and um you know go to the best school. Even if it costs the most, you can get student aid, and we all know how that turns out down the road. It can be
Yeah.
very, very stressful and burdensome for someone so young. starting out with a lot of debt over their head. So, anyways, back to HSAs. I know they came into the scene as this cool tax-free vehicle to give individuals more control of their medical savings, but is there any more to that history of how HSAs came to be?
Well, they're actually a fairly new concept. They didn't really come onto the scene until about 20 years ago in 2003. The government knew they wanted to provide this concept of a medical savings account, and I think it came about in the 80s and it was piloted in the 90s, but it took Congress a while to kind of to get it right and to get it, signed into to law, if that's the right term. So, the health savings account was born in the early 2000s. So it is a fairly new kind of account. And I think that's why people are still getting the grasp of it, as we speak. They're not as familiar with HSAs as other tools like 401ks, IRAs, and things like that.
Okay. So then let's break them down. How do they work? What are the specifics? What makes them so unique and useful?
Well, the number one thing which you called out at the beginning is that they are triple tax advantaged. Your contributions that go into an HSA, they're pre-tax dollars. While your money is in the account, it is growing tax free. You're not having to report that money on your taxes every year. And then when you go to withdraw and use those funds, as long as you use them for qualified medical expenses, those withdrawals are also tax free. So you essentially never pay taxes on that money, which, unlike 401ks, IRAs, which are also tax advantage, you're still either paying upfront or on the back end. So the HSA is truly unique that you don't pay on the front end or the back end.
Okay, so is the money you put in an HSA invested? Like, is it automatically invested in the stock market, or is it more of a savings account if you're technically going to be using this for medical expenses?
Yeah. So it is, despite its name, health savings account, it actually is an investment account. So the way it works is usually there's a certain amount of money that is required to be held in cash. It's usually like $1,000 or 2,000. $1,000 or $2,000, and then anything above that amount can be invested in the market. The cash requirement is going to be different depending on the financial institution that holds your HSA. So that's going to fluctuate from firm to firm. You're going to want to understand what that threshold is based on your specific HSA plan. Like I said, above that, you can get that money invested in the market, invested in index funds. Your options for which funds you can invest in is also going to be limited by the institution that holds your plan, by your plan provider. So you can't invest in anything like an IRA. You're still going to have a certain menu of investments. So that's kind of what makes it similar to a 401k, is that your options are going to be limited there, but still great that you could get that money invested in the market.
Okay, so besides having to have a current high deductible health plan, are there other limitations on who can open, contribute to, or use an HSA?
I mean, not really anyone, any individual can open an HSA. It's not tied to your employer, right? So, like, doesn't matter where you work. You may not even be employed right now. It only matters that you have an active high deductible health plan to be able to contribute to your HSA, but you actually don't need an active high deductible health plan to use your HSA to spend the money. So, for example, like if you signed up for a high deductible health plan 5 years ago and you've been contributing to your HSA every year, and then for whatever reason you switch to a PPO plan, you cannot contribute to your HSA plan while you have the PPO plan, but you can still use that money for qualified medical expenses. And then when you go back to a high deductible health plan in the future because you don't like the PPO anymore, then you could start contributing to your HSA again. So these accounts are not use it or lose it. Like it's always yours to hold no matter, where you work, no matter what your insurance plan is, if it switches, like it's your account in your name that you own.
Okay, so just to repeat that back to you, basically, when you have a high deductible health plan as your insurance for the year, you can contribute to an HSA. And on years where you do not have a high deductible health plan, you can no longer contribute to your HSA, but you can still use your HSA if you have money in that account.
Yep, that's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Great. And then I'm glad you mentioned the use it or lose it because I know people can often conflate FSAs, which are flexible spending accounts, and HSAs, which are these health savings accounts that we're talking about. Can you explain the difference of those two? First of all, I hate that they sound so similar, but they are kind of similar. So, yeah, help us understand the difference.
It's very easy to get them confused because they sound the same and they're both used for medical expenses, but they do operate very differently. So, a flexible spending account and an FSA, those are employer sponsored plans. So, you have to work for an employer that offers an FSA, and then, you sign up for one when you do your employee benefits, and then those funds you are given in that tax year, they do not roll over. They are not really yours that you own. You forfeit them by the end of the tax year if you do not use them. So I don't really like to think of them as accounts that individuals own. I like to think of them more as like a medical allowance that your employer gives you. And then whether you use it or not at the end of the year, it's going to reset. Um, Whereas the HSA truly is an account that you own. It is not use it or lose it. It rolls over year. You can contribute it to it. With the FSA, you don't, the individual does not contribute to the account. It's like I said, it's just an allowance. It's just an amount kind of like a one-time amount you're given by the employer. HSA is truly yours to max out, to invest. One thing I will add is some employers, so if you have health insurance through your employer, some employers will actually contribute to your HSA as part of their benefits, kind of like an employer match in a 401k. They'll sometimes do that with your HSA. I've worked for an employer who has done that, who has contributed, X amount to my HSA as long as I max it out, or I forget exactly what the stipulation was. And then I've also worked for employers who I did open an HSA through my company health insurance plan, but they didn't contribute to the HSA. So if that is something your employer offers, obviously you want to take full advantage of getting that extra contribution in there.
I think that that's where the confusion comes in because HSAs are sometimes given benefits or offered by an employer, even though they don't have to be. And I think at this point,
Yeah.
we're so used to getting our health insurance through an employer.
Yeah.
That's probably where the confusion comes into. But FSAs are always going to be offered by an employer. HSAs, not necessarily. Again, you can go out to the free market and you can get a high deductible health plan and have an HSA.
Yeah.
All right. Then my follow-up to that is, can you have an FSA and contribute to an HSA in the same year?
Mhm. Okay. Good question. Generally, the answer is no. You can really only use one or the other. There are a few exceptions for limited FSA plans, so like dependent care FSA. So if you have an FSA through your employer that's specifically like for your kiddos, you can still use an HSA. Or if you have a limited FSA that's only for dental and vision, you can have an HSA. But if it's the full-fledged FSA and HSA, you could only use one or the other in a particular year.
All right. So then let's get back to HSAs because that's where the focus is. And we have more control over these accounts. Can you just break down some of the rules and restrictions around them?
So anything that is going to come with these amazing tax benefits is obviously going to come with some strings attached as well. So we kind of talked about some of the restrictions, but I'll recap. You have to have an active high deductible health plan to contribute to one. The annual contribution limit is usually very, very low. It's going to be probably your lowest amount that you can contribute out of all tax advantage accounts. So, for example, in 2023, for an individual, the max you can contribute is $3,850. If you have a family plan, you can contribute $7,750. And then if you're 55 or older, you get an extra $1,000 to contribute for your catch up plan. And then in 2024, that limit is going to go up. So for individuals, the max contribution will be $4,150, and for families, it'll be $8,300. So again, it's pretty low. It's not going to be can't get triple tax advantage on a whole bunch of money, so to speak. And then another thing we mentioned is that your investment selections are going to be limited by your plan provider. So you're going to have to pay attention to that. And then you have to use the funds for qualified medical expenses. If you don't, you will be hit with taxes on that money, and you will be hit with a 20% penalty as well. So that's going to hurt. That's going to eat into your balance. One cool thing, though, is after age 65, you can use your HSA funds for non-medical expenses, and you will not be hit with a penalty. You will still have to pay taxes on that money, so it kind of becomes like a regular tax advantage retirement account, but you will not have that additional 20% penalty.
Okay, so since you brought up how the max HSA contribution uh, limit is lower than the other tax advantage accounts, I just wanted to compare it. So if it's $3,850 for an individual to max out their HSA in 2023, it is $6,500 to max out your IRA in 2023 and $22,500 to max out your 401k this year. So that's why Whit is saying, like, it's great that there's these triple tax advantages, but they're not going to let you put $22,500 in there. And then just the other thing I wanted to mention is that last piece, that if you get to age 65 and you didn't have a bunch of medical needs, that money is still yours. You are just going to have to pay taxes at your income tax level at that time. Because remember, Uncle Sam's going to get his if you don't meet all of their rules and restrictions. But it's so amazing to have that money growing there in case you are someone, and I'm sure everyone listening has plenty of senior citizens in their life that they have seen experience health trouble that is very costly. So since your money is invested in an HSA, because it's an investment account technically, is it better to use the money for health expenses now, or let that money compound over the years so you have more funds in the future for those potential medical expenses?
I obviously love this question, and I'm sure you can guess what my answer is going to be. But it's similar to the marshmallow experiment, if you're familiar, where it's like, okay, would you rather have one marshmallow now, two marshmallows in an hour, four marshmallows in 2 hours, and so on?
Well, I'd have to like marshmallows, so.
I mean, swap out marshmallow with something that you love, right? Like, how long can you wait to have more of it? So, I mean, anyone who can defer their spending in their HSA and just let the power of compounding do its thing is going to have a lot more funds at their disposal in their later years of life. So, like, I mean, for an example, if an investor maxes out her HSA this year and then just never contributes to her HSA again, but also doesn't touch it for 30 years, using the rule of 72 at an 8% average annual rate of return, her account would be just under $39,000 in 30 years. So, do you want to have, 3,850 to spend now today, or almost 39,000 in 30 years? Um,
And
I recognize
that's just from 1 year's
that's
contribution.
one. That's no, yes, that's 1 year. So that's not even including adding, maxing out the contributions for the next 30 years. Imagine that exponential growth on top of all the compounding. So it's extremely beneficial to contribute to an HSA in your younger years, and really hold off and wait to use those funds for medical expenses later on in life. But I do recognize that not everyone is in that position, right? Medical needs arise when we're younger. It's expensive to have a child. It's, you just never know what happens. And that's the great thing too, is that the HSA is at your disposal whenever you need it. So it goes back to that control of, you can use it, you can compound, you can use it in certain years. I mean, you have full control over this kind of account, which makes it so great.
Okay, we've talked a lot about HSAs, but more just how they work and the restrictions and use cases. Can you just share your personal use case? Like, what is your
Mhm.
HSA strategy, since I
Yeah.
know you love this account?
So I really didn't learn about or fully grasp the idea of an HSA until 2016. And that's when I really started learning about, okay, I could utilize this account, invest this money. I'd have to pay higher insurance costs out of pocket, but my premiums are low. So I I opened, my first HSA in 2016 and started contributing to it. And I was just using it right away for medical expenses, because I just kind of thought that's what you do. You put money in and then you use it for medical expenses. And then 2 years later, when I was really researching it, figuring out my strategy, I was like, wait a minute here. The power of compounding can really be on my side, um, if I keep contributing in it and I don't use it. So now I max out my HSA every year that I can, and I don't use it. I get that money invested. I check on it once a year, my investments once a year. I get it rebalanced. And my plan is to just have 3 times, 4 times more the amount than I have today in that account, you know, in in my 60s and 70s. So it goes back to it's the first account I max out every year because it has the best tax advantages, and it's going to be like the last the plan is the last account that I use.
So, okay, 2 questions. How much do you have in your HSA? And since you don't use it for your health expenses today, how do you do your health expenses
Yeah.
these days?
So I have just over 11,000 in there today. And I'm just letting it grow, not touching it. And today I do pay out of pocket for my health expenses. I'm, diligent about going to my preventative care, my annual visits, and a lot of times those are free anyway, right? So I recommend everyone take advantage of like your preventative care annual checkups. Those aren't even charged usually. It's only when maybe there's a follow up to that. Oh, you need some extra testing because blood work looked a little different, or oh, let's just get this checked out, or that. That's really the only time then I pay out of pocket. And of course, if there's an emergency, I end up in the emergency room. Like that's gonna have out of pocket costs too. But in my opinion, it's better for me to cover those costs out of pocket right now and let my HSA grow, because arguably in my 60s, 70s, 80s, I'm going to have a lot more medical expenses than I'm going to have today. Health is going to decline. Like, my health is not going to get better. That's a given. And so I want to be very prepared for those later years of life to stay healthy.
I mean, this just goes back to question the quo and paying attention and creating your individual plan. Like, something I respect so much about you is just how willing you are to learn this stuff, implement this stuff, and grow from there, right? Like, um, I'll talk a little bit about my HSA
Yeah, I want
strategy.
to hear your strategy, because I'm sure it's different than mine, so that'll
It
be
it
good for
it
listeners.
it is, and it's just less involved at this point. I think that, we have an HSA, but we've been using it because we had a baby, and so anyways, currently, we have the $1,000 cash minimum required in our account. We have a little over 3,000 invested on top of that in our account, and we've spent 2K just this year to date, from that HSA. Now, the one thing I will mention is we do plan to max it out every year. That's coming from a paycheck. Um, but we're still spending that. Like, we're not getting as much invested as I'd like. So I'm thinking about iterating on this strategy a lot from just talking to you. And then the one other thing that's a little confusing but worth mentioning here is just that the HSA is technically my husband's, but it can be used for our family's medical expenses. My husband has our daughter on his insurance, and I do not actually have access to an HSA because I am a business owner that provides health insurance to my employees. So, as a small business owner, because we do that, and we don't have to, like, we're small enough that we don't have to do that. We choose to do that. We get a tax credit for doing so. And so, because I already get that, I can't have that HSA and also get the tax credit there. I can't get all the advantages just on one side.
Yeah,
Um,
you still get the tax advantage as a business owner, but it's coming a different way, and
right.
that's a little more complicated because there's a lot more to your taxes and things like that when you're a business owner, but good call out.
Yeah, but it is a great account, and I feel like the huz and I are due for a a strategy sesh on what we want to do with our HSA going forward. So, okay, let's just wrap this episode with some action steps on how someone, a listener, can go about opening an HSA if they are interested in getting access to this triple tax advantage amazing investment account, and starting to contribute to it. Like, what would they do
Mhm.
after this
Yeah,
episode ends?
these steps would be very similar to opening any kind of investment to get that account open. Your next step would then be to fund your account. You obviously need to put money in there. So decide if you want to max it out right away. Decide if you want to set up automatic contributions monthly, quarterly, you name it, however you want to contribute to your account. Get that done. Get that money in there. Get that tax advantage. Step 4 then is, as soon as you're over that cash requirement threshold, get your funds invested. This is where compounding returns come into play. And I always stress it as the most important step, because if you don't get that money invested, it's in cash, it's not in the market, you're missing out on compound returns. It's just essentially sitting there as a glorified savings account. Step 5 would then be manage your account. Rebalance once a year, check on your account, make sure you still like the index funds that they're invested in. Just put eyes on it. Remember that this is part of your overall investment strategy. Know where your account balance is. Know what's at your disposal. Know what that money will look like 30 years down the road, 20 years down the road, even if you don't touch it. And then, the bonus step to managing your account. If you decide you don't really like the financial institution that's holding your HSA, or maybe you just want to try out a different one, you can move your money. You can move your account to a different bank, a different firm. I have done this. I've opened an HSA with Optum Bank, and then I had opened another HSA with Fidelity because of the insurance plan that my employer provided, and then I moved it back, and now I'm thinking of moving it again. So it's not like anything, it's not set in stone. Like the account, like the HSA account that you own, and if you don't, try a new institution, because again, it's your account to own, not use it or lose it. You're in full control. You could do what you want with it.
Yeah, and I think well, first of all, thanks for that recap of getting those steps done. If two things. One, you can end up with multiple HSAs similar to IRAs, right? You might have a Roth IRA,
Yep.
and then you start a traditional IRA, and maybe you have a 401k, and then you roll it over and it's at a different institution. So you can end up having different IRAs in different places. But you will always have a contribution limit for the year that will make it so that you can't contribute more than that amount across all of the accounts. So same with the HSA. And then I guess my just follow-up to the follow-up is, don't get stressed out if you have these accounts. This is literally why we built the Wealth Circle, to understand these accounts, to make sure that you're in alignment with the right account structure. And when you're not, to transition, roll over, start new, close, whatever needs to be done, because it's going to be different for everyone. But this stuff is so not scary once you fricking do it. So I know it can be hard to go from listening, on your commute to work about this account. Hopefully it's exciting, because you're like, yeah, I want all these tax advantages. But just know that it can be done. And when you do become that woman who's like, I know how this account works, and I have access to this one, and my money's invested above the cash threshold for my HSA, and I know that it is working, and growing and going to be there down the road, you will feel so good. And I just wish I could come up with an analogy of like how good you'd feel, because then maybe more women would like run and figure it out and do it. But it will feel so good is the best thing I can say.
I agree with you.
So that's it. That's what we have on the beautiful health savings accounts that even in their name are a little confusing, because they are indeed amazing, triple tax advantaged investment accounts. Thanks, Whitby, for breaking this down.
Thank you, listeners, and see you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode, come join us in a Wealth Circle. It's our live, online, 12-week course and community where we teach you how to create a personalized financial plan alongside hundreds of other women building wealth. It will change your life and your money for good. You can apply at factorawealth.com/wealth circle. That's factorawealth.com/wealth circle. See you in the next episode.